Jungkook was born on September 1st, 1997, in Busan, South Korea. He grew up in a caring family and spent his childhood like many other kids around him. School, friends, drawing, playing, nothing about those early years suggested that millions of people would one day know his name. People who met Jungkook often described him as quiet and polite. He wasn't someone who always wanted attention. Instead, he liked observing people before opening up. That calm personality stayed with him as he grew older. Looking back today, it's interesting to think that someone so reserved would eventually become one of the most recognizable performers in K-pop. But none of that happened overnight. The moment music started feeling different. As Jungkook entered his teenage years, music slowly became more than just something he listened to. He found himself paying closer attention to singers, to live performances, to the emotions artists could create without saying many words. Every performance made him a little more curious. He wasn't just watching anymore. He started wondering, could I ever do something like this? At first, it was only a thought, a quiet dream he kept to himself, because dreams are easy to imagine, but much harder to chase. A decision that changed everything. There comes a moment in almost every successful person's life when one small decision quietly changes everything. For Jungkook, that moment arrived while he was still very young. Instead of ignoring his growing interest in music, he decided to give himself a chance. It wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't a shortcut. It was simply one opportunity, one audition, a single step that would place him in front of people who could completely change his future. At that time, he couldn't have known what was waiting on the other side of that decision. But sometimes, the biggest changes begin with the smallest choices. Sometimes, life changes without making any noise. No celebration, no announcement. Just one decision that quietly changes everything. For Jungkook, that moment came in 2011. He decided to audition for Superstar K, one of South Korea's most popular talent competitions. Like thousands of other teenagers, he walked into the audition hoping to show what he could do. He wasn't the most experienced singer in the room, he wasn't the loudest, and he certainly wasn't expecting that this single audition would completely change the direction of his life. Although he didn't make it to the final rounds of the competition, something unexpected happened after the audition. Several entertainment companies noticed him. Instead of walking away with disappointment, he walked away with opportunities. For a teenager who had only recently started taking music seriously, it was a moment that very few people experience. Choosing the unexpected. Now imagine this, you're still a teenager. Some of the biggest entertainment companies in South Korea want you to join them. Most people would choose the largest company without thinking twice. It seems like the safest decision. But Jungkook made a choice that surprised many people. He chose Big Hit Entertainment. At that time, Big Hit wasn't the company people know today. It was much smaller than many of its competitors. There were no guarantees, no promise of worldwide success. No one could predict what would happen in the future. So why did he choose Big Hit? Years later, Jungkook shared that after watching RM perform, he felt inspired and believed he wanted to work with someone like him. Sometimes one person can quietly influence a decision that changes another person's entire future. And that's exactly what happened. Leaving home. Making that decision also meant leaving something much more important. Home. Jungkook moved from Busan to Seoul while he was still very young. For many teenagers, leaving family at that age would already feel overwhelming. Everything around him was different. A new city, a new routine, new people, new expectations. Instead of spending every evening with his family, he was now spending long hours inside practice rooms. There were days filled with excitement. There were also days filled with homesickness. But every challenge reminded him why he had come to Seoul in the first place. He had given himself a chance. Now it was up to him to make it count. Learning from scratch. Being accepted as a trainee didn't mean he had already become an artist. In many ways, his real journey had only just begun. Every day brought another lesson. Hours of dance practice, vocal training, fitness, evaluations, mistakes, corrections, then doing it all over again the next day. Jungkook wasn't trying to become better than everyone else. He was trying to become better than he had been yesterday. Little by little, those small improvements began adding up. Without realizing it, the quiet teenager from Busan was slowly transforming into a confident performer. But the hardest chapter of his trainee life was still waiting ahead. Because the group he was preparing to debut with would soon face doubts, criticism, and uncertainty before anyone even knew their names. Moving to Seoul was only the beginning. The real challenge started inside Big Hit Entertainment. Every trainee there shared the same dream, to debut. But dreaming and debuting were two completely different things. Every month, trainees were evaluated. One mistake, one weak performance, and everything they had worked for could disappear. For Jungkook, every practice session became another opportunity to improve. He listened carefully. He watched others. He practiced again and again, not because someone forced him to, but because he believed every small improvement mattered. The hours were long, sometimes exhausting, but he kept going. Not because the road was easy, because the dream was worth it. Meeting the future BTS members. As time passed, Jungkook met 6 other trainees: RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, and V. Each of them came from different backgrounds, different cities, different personalities, different reasons for chasing music. At first, they weren't the global group people know today. They were simply 7 young men trying to find their place. Like any group living together, they had different habits and different opinions. Sometimes they laughed together, sometimes they disagreed, sometimes they felt completely exhausted. But slowly, those strangers became teammates. And before long, they started feeling like family. The countdown to debut. Months of training turned into years. The closer debut came, the greater the pressure became. Everyone knew that debuting wasn't the finish line. It was only the beginning. There was excitement, but there was also uncertainty. Would people like their music? Would anyone notice a new group from a small company? No one had those answers. The only thing they could control was how hard they worked. Instead of worrying about things outside their control, they focused on becoming better performers every single day. For Jungkook, those years shaped not only his skills, they shaped his mindset. He learned that confidence isn't something people are born with. It grows little by little through preparation, patience, and experience. June 13th, 2013. Then, the day finally arrived. On June 13th, 2013, BTS officially debuted. For the 7 members, it was the moment they had imagined for years. Standing on stage together for the very first time as BTS must have felt unforgettable. But debuting didn't suddenly solve every problem. In many ways, their biggest challenges were only beginning. The music industry was already filled with well-known artists. Competition was intense. Recognition didn't happen overnight. Every performance became another chance to prove themselves. Every fan they gained felt meaningful. Every small achievement reminded them they were moving forward, even if progress sometimes felt slow. Yet he carried himself with a level of discipline that people around him admired. He continued learning, continued improving, and continued believing that consistency would eventually make a difference. For a long time, BTS kept moving forward one step at a time. Every new song, every performance, every fan meeting became another opportunity to introduce themselves to people who had never heard of them before. Success didn't arrive overnight. It grew slowly. One listener became 10. 10 became thousands. And those thousands eventually turned into a global community that would later be known around the world as ARMY. For Jungkook, this period wasn't about celebrating success. It was about staying focused. Even after debuting, he continued practicing almost every day. He often stayed longer after rehearsals, repeating dance moves until they felt natural. If a vocal performance wasn't exactly how he wanted it, he practiced again. For him, improvement was never something that stopped after debut. It became part of his daily life. More than just the youngest member. As BTS continued releasing new music, fans started noticing something special about Jungkook. He wasn't only singing, he wasn't only dancing, he seemed comfortable learning almost anything he was interested in. Whether it was recording vocals, performing difficult choreography, creating artwork, filming videos, photography, or exploring new creative skills, he always approached them with curiosity. That mindset eventually earned him a nickname many fans know today, the Golden Maknae. Not because he was expected to be perfect, but because he was always willing to learn. Every challenge became another opportunity to grow, a different kind of pressure. As BTS became more popular, expectations also became much higher. Every comeback attracted more attention. Every live performance was watched by millions. Every interview, every appearance, every small mistake could instantly become a topic of discussion online. Living under that kind of attention isn't easy, but Jungkook rarely allowed outside opinions to change the way he worked. Instead of responding to every comment, he chose to let his performances speak for themselves. That quiet determination became one of the qualities fans respected the most. Because confidence doesn't always come from speaking loudly. Sometimes it comes from showing up, again and again, no matter how much pressure exists around you. The bond that never changed. As years passed, one thing remained remarkably consistent: the relationship between the 7 members. Behind the cameras, they continued supporting each other through busy schedules, long rehearsals, and constant travel. Jungkook often spoke about how much he learned from the older members during his early years. They weren't just teammates, they became people he could rely on. That trust helped BTS face difficult moments together, instead of facing them alone. For many fans, that genuine connection became just as meaningful as the music itself. Before moving towards which part inspired you the most, mention in comments. BTS Army and Jungkook fans, put a purple heart in comments. Every journey eventually reaches a point where success is no longer measured by numbers. For Jungkook, that point came when people stopped talking only about his performances and started talking about the person behind them. Over the years, he has continued to grow, not just as a singer or performer, but as an artist who constantly looks for new ways to improve himself. Whether it's exploring different styles of music, learning new skills, or challenging himself creatively, one thing has remained the same. He has never allowed success to become a reason to stop learning. And perhaps that's one of the biggest reasons why so many people connect with his journey. Not because his life was perfect, but because every chapter came with new challenges and he kept moving forward. More than a career, when people hear the name Jungkook, they often think about hit songs, unforgettable performances, and years of dedication. But behind all of that is a simple lesson. Big dreams don't become reality in a single moment. They're built through thousands of ordinary days, days filled with practice, patience, self-doubt, and the decision to keep going anyway. Looking back at his journey, it's incredible to think that the quiet boy from Busan eventually inspired millions of people around the world. Not because everything came easily, but because he continued growing one step at a time. His story reminds us that confidence isn't something you're born with. Sometimes, confidence is something you build through consistency. A journey still being written. What's even more fascinating is that Jungkook's story is still unfolding. Every new project, every new performance, every new chapter adds something different to his journey. And that's what makes following his career so exciting. Because no matter how much he has already achieved, there is always another chapter waiting to be written. From a quiet child in Busan, to a determined trainee in Seoul, to one of the most recognizable artists of his generation, Jungkook's journey is a reminder that every remarkable story begins with a single decision to believe in yourself. And sometimes, the smallest step you take today can completely change your tomorrow. I've also uploaded a complete documentary about Kim Taehyung, V. You'll find the link in the description, and if you enjoyed Jungkook's story, I'm confident you'll enjoy that one as well. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, and if you want to watch more interesting videos about BTS and K-pop, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next upload. Finally, let me know in the comments, which BTS members should I make a documentary about next? I'd love to read your suggestions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.